Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the Senator from Central Oregon for his carry, and to thank the Senator from Northeast and Southeast Portland for bringing this bill forward, and for the other sponsors of this measure. As you have heard, this bill will have profound benefits to the students across Oregon by removing unnecessary and damaging roadblocks for success for students seeking higher education and a career. As we talk about the future of Oregon, we have to drive attention to post-secondary education and career training, a career beyond a job. All communities benefit from the skills of those who have sought post-secondary education and career training. And as we know, the future of this state depends on a highly educated workforce. Everyone's educational journey is different, and as a state, we should do everything in our power to ensure educational opportunities are available to everyone who wants it, whether that is at a community college or university, and regardless of the income or the challenges that you face. This past year, I had the chance to travel Oregon with senators from District 30, and from North and Northeast Portland, and from North and Southeast Portland, and from state representatives on the Joint Task Force for Underrepresented Students in Higher Education, also known as the Student Voice Task Force. It was bipartisan and bicameral, a task force which visited universities and community colleges around the state to hear firsthand from our underrepresented students, first-generation college students, immigrants, members of the LGBTQ community, low-income students, rural students, and students with disabilities. What we heard from task force meetings in town to town was eye-opening. As a lot of you know, I've spent a lot of my career in and around education and post-secondary education, and yet still I was shocked to hear the kinds of roadblocks that students are facing, as many of them are working full-time, often raising families, trying so hard to reach launch velocity out of poverty and into a meaningful career. And we know the barriers that they face. They shared it with us: affordable tuition, books, fees, childcare, transportation, housing, and the institutional barriers like classes that don't transfer between institutions, in addition to personal challenges around mental health and the sort of wraparound supports that they need. And finally, colleagues, at the end of our meetings, the task force generated a report. And in that report was recommendations of changes to our financial aid programs, support services, and accountability to our post-secondary systems. Some of these recommendations in there were substantial, as I mentioned. Increasing need-based financial aid is something that we need to be challenging this legislative session. Alleviating the housing cost burdens for students, expanding mental health for students. But a first step, as reflected in Senate Bill 424, toward the goal of a higher education system that is accessible to all. Some of these steps are a little bit more simple, and that's what we see reflected today. And I want to also note a letter from our colleague from District 30, and a letter that he penned to the committee on December 13th in partnership with his state representative from Eastern Oregon. They pointed some really important points that we should be focusing on first. And the fifth point in this letter talks about this exact bill: prohibiting the practice of transcript withholding and limits the practice of student class registration. So colleagues, I urge your support today as a first step toward addressing the legacy of underfunding and understanding the needs that our students across the state are facing. Please support Senate Bill 424 today.